B1 family, welcome to BlackLogic. I posed this question to one of my so-called Democratic friends. What have Joe Biden done for Black people? What had he specifically done to Black Americans that will have us to come out in droves as we once did before? 87% of Black Americans voted for Joe Biden, which he stood up on his campaign rally and said, the African American community had my back and I'm going to have theirs as well. 87% of us, family. I guess that other 13 or 5% voted Republican while everyone else stayed at home like myself because nothing was on the table. And a lot of us is now speaking to the facts at hand. Policy over party. And I stated this before in this channel that if you really look into a lot of the American policies, majority of Black people will probably lean more conservative than anything else. But the problem with that is we have been fear-mongered, tricked, coerced to believing that the Republican Party, and I'm not telling you guys to go vote Republican. Again, I am not Republican. I am apolitical. I'm not Democrat as well because it has been working for quite some time. And they've had things on the table like legislations from different organizations. And this is from whitehouse.gov, good old Joe. And this is some legislation that one of my friends proposed to me that it was specifically for Black people. Executive Order 13985, advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. Where does it say Black people at? Where does it say Black Americans at? It doesn't, family. Be one to the family. Good evening to you guys. Underserved community means everybody. It means everybody. That will never mean Black Americans because there's plenty of undeserved and underserved communities, undeserved and underserved communities in America. President Biden signed a second executive order on equity that directs the federal government to continue to work to make the promise of America real for every American, including rural communities, that's white, communities of color, that's everybody except for white men, tribal communities, again, that was encompassed into communities of color, so tribal communities, that's Native Americans, Alaskan Native Americans, Pacific Islanders, etc. Then if you didn't get encompassed in the rural communities or the communities of colors, LGBTQI plus individuals, people with disabilities, women and girls, and communities impacted by persistent poverty. So everybody except white men, because white men already have all the privileges. But again, they were included in the rural communities. So this particular legislation is not for specifically Black Americans. This is for everybody. It literally mapped out and family, it itemized everybody. It literally named everybody. So if anybody think that this particular piece of legislation is for Black people, you will once again absolutely wrong. And again, I'm just debunking whether you're right, left, in the middle, Republican, Democrat, it really doesn't matter. This government has yet to sign legislation that will assist, support, and help Black Americans as well as it done other ethnic groups in America. Because we get things like this. Hired appointees that look like America. More than half of all of Biden's appointees are women and half identify as people of color. What does that do for Black people? Well, you see there's some Black women up there. You see some people of color up there in the White House on Biden's administration staff. Again, I ask, how does that help Black people, the descendants of American slaves, the descendants of those enslaved Africans that were here prior to the Mongolian red-looking natives, as well as those who came over on ships? How does it help those people? How does it help foundational Black Americans? How does it help U.S. freedmen? Whatever terminology you want to use, how does it help those descendants of American slaves? Just because you put Black faces in white places or in high places and you make them female, this is an agenda that the Democratic Party has been pushing before Joe Biden's presidential run as well as during Joe Biden's presidential run, because what they're going to do here quite very, very soon, family, they're start going to beat feet and promote this on ABC, NBC, MSNBC, probably every network except for Fox and maybe C-SPAN. But the majority of the major networks are going to be heavily Democratic funded and heavily Democratic ran in order to once again push propaganda and market to black folk to go once again vote Democrat. I just have one question for all my beautiful black intelligent people. We have been tricked. We have been misled. We have been misinformed. We have been controlled. We have been fear-mongered. Anything that you can essentially do to a group of people have been done to black people, whether it be physically or mentally, emotionally or psychologically, and we keep falling for the trick bag. It's going to come a time where other black people who are not coons are going to come out and say, black Americans are the dumbest group of people in the world. You live in the most powerful country. You have the second largest black population outside of Africa. The first is Brazil. And you've been protesting, you've been marching, you've been using lobbyists to rally for reparations, rallying for a protected class for foundational black Americans, wiping away qualified immunity and making black Americans a protected class, and you have not been successful. That is because we are a group that are divided by special interests, right? Because you have your Jim Clyburns, you have your Cori Bushes, you have all of these black people who are in these political high places that are throwing bar mitzvahs, they're throwing barbecues, fish fries, they're doing all these things to tantalize the low intellectual black people to once again vote for Democrats. Well, Jim Clyburn, he threw a fish fry, it was free. So he got to be a great candidate. So you get one meal a year. You get one meal every 2 to 4 years. This is how they fool black people year in and year out. It states here, nominated historically diverse judges and confirmed the first black woman in American history to serve as a judge of the Supreme Court, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, in the first 2 years of office. 65% of President Biden's judicial nominees were people of color. Again, symbolism doesn't help black people. Symbolism, just because you have people in particular positions and places, does not help black people. What's a black judge up there? What's his name? Clarence Thomas. What legislation? What cases has he overturned to help black people or to help a black person, so to speak? If anything, if you saw a Clarence Thomas documentary, he's resentful of black people. He actually, this is my own conjecture and my own opinion of the documentary. What I got outside of the Clarence Thomas documentary is that he hates black people because of his upbringing, because he's dark-skinned. Look at it for yourself, family. I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up, family. This is what I went over. So let's look at some other legislation. Here's a popular piece of legislation. Here's a popular legislation that never got passed, that Democrats were like, oh, but it passed the House, but it didn't pass the Senate, and it sure didn't become law in America. It was introduced back in 2021, and it's been sitting at the House ever since. Let's read what's in this bill. Again, this is the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. So let's see how this helps black people, right? Because when you go to the FBI crime data, it shows that black people are persecuted, discriminated, and violated for hate crimes more than any other group. Yes, that means more than Asians. Yes, that means more than Jews, even to this day. There's more hate crimes done against black Americans than any other group year to date. These are facts. These are not fictions. These are not emotions. These are metrics and statistics. So what does the bill say? What does the bill say? Let me blow it up. Some of you guys on your cell phones. It says that the bill addresses a wide range of policies and issues regarding policing practices and law enforcement accountability. It increases accountability for law enforcement misconduct, restricts the use of certain police practices, enhances transparency in data collection, and establishes best practices and training requirements. Okay, it does nothing so far. It's just a bunch of word salad, a bunch of verbiage. It's kind of like when you wrote your term paper in college or in high school. She said you got a bunch of fancy words, but you're not saying anything. There's no substance. There's no meat. The bill enhances existing enforcement mechanisms to remedy violations by law enforcement. Among other things, it does the following. It lowers the criminal intent standard from willfully to knowing or reckless to convict a law enforcement officer for misconduct in a federal prosecution. There's a lot of loopholes in that sentence, but I won't dive too far into it. I'm not a lawyer. Limits qualify. It said limits. Doesn't delete, doesn't wipe away, doesn't take away, whatever. It limits qualified immunity. And that is the one verbiage that essentially why millions, thousands of these police officers get off for hate crimes. They get off for brutalizing Black people. It says limits qualified immunity as a defense to liability in a private civil action against a law enforcement officer and grants administrative subpoena power to the Department of Justice and pattern or practice investigations. It established a framework to prevent and remedy racial profiling. How? How do you limit implicit bias? How do you do that? See, America markets and shows these images over and over again to the American population of Black people being the degenerate class in America. That Black people are the criminal class in America. That Black people are the ones going out killing and stealing and robbing people. We're the face of the new retail crisis. We're the face of the fentanyl crisis. We're the face of anti-Semitic tropes. We're the face of anything negative in America. But you're going to talk about it established a framework to prevent and remedy racial profiling? Not in my lifetime. That will not happen in my lifetime. Because majority of police officers are white or white Hispanic. Okay, and I'm not stating that all police officers are racist, okay, or prejudiced. I'm not stating that. But we have a lot of statistics on the book that show us there's a large percentage of police officers who commit hate crimes against Black folk. It also goes on to state, it also limits the unnecessary use of force and restricts the use of no-knock warrants, chokeholds, and card holds. So that helps everybody, does it not? Again, this is another piece of legislation that they touted to the Black community, that they promoted to the Black community to say, this will be beneficial for you guys. In some instance, it is. But again, this helps everybody. There is no specific legislation that is directly targeting, supporting, and helping Black people. But see, when you go to all these other ethnic groups, and I've done this before, not here today, family, but I've done this before, where I've showed you actual legislation that was specifically for one group, for Asians, for Jews, for Hispanics. The list goes on and on and on. But when it comes to us, these legislations are very broad, and they encompass everyone. So again, why are we going out in 87% voting for a group that don't support us? Voting for a group that every 2 and 4 years, once they get their vote from us, they turn their back on us. And now we're yelling in town halls, why you let these immigrants in, and why are you undermining the Black community? They're talking about resources. Crime are going up because illegal immigrants are in our towns and cities. I'm tired of being a sanctuary city. That is because we was watching TV and not reading policies. This was happening as we were watching the left bash the right. We were watching how Democrats was using Donald Trump as the boogeyman to scare Black folk into voting Democrat. We ignored Joe Biden when he said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. We ignored Joe Biden's past. Everyone said, well, that happened such a long time ago. See, when you go for a job interview, family, and you show them your resume, they take hold of your entire past work history to see if you're suitable for the job. They don't forget your history. No one forgets your history. You've heard the term, I forgive you, but I won't forget. That's where we are right now. But this is a nothing burger. Now, this one right here, this particular legislation that was presented by Cori Bush, it has baby teeth, so to speak. And I'm going to point a couple of things out. Again, this actually has some baby teeth where reparations is on the table. Actual tangibles are on the table. But the reason why this has baby teeth because this has trick language in it. And I highlighted some for your viewing pleasure. But again, introduce, and it even go to the House or Senate. So it's stuck there, okay? It's stuck here. Nothing has happened, okay? Let's get into it really quickly. This is H-Res 414. And right off the bat, here's a resolution. Recognizing that the United States has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans. Can I help you guys out? And what continent and what countries have the enslavement of Africans actually occurred in? Not just America. They was enslaved in Jamaica, in the Caribbean. To a certain extent, they was enslaved even in their own countries in Africa. There was also enslaved in the UK at one particular time. We had slaves all over the world that were from African descent. So if we don't use specific targeted language like U.S. freedmen, black U.S. freedmen, or descendants of enslaved Africans of America, because even when I look at the term ADOS, American descendants of slaves, don't you know there's Americans running around stating that Native Americans were slaves in America, which is untrue. Irish Americans were slaves in America, which isn't true. Okay, they were indentured servants. That, by some way or form, because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, Chinese were subjugated and they were boxed into these ghettos. So that was enslavement to a certain degree. That was being enslaved. No, all of these are false. But this is how certain groups who are from different African and Caribbean countries can crowbar their way into the reparations claim because it simply say enslavement of Africans. Let me move on. If you come down here a little bit, it says that the federal government must compensate descendants of enslaved Black people and people of African descent in the United States to account for harms of chattel slavery. Now, when I look at this, on one hand, my mind has me to believe that they're talking about descendants of Black Americans here in the United States of America, but that's not the way it reads, does it not? Let me read this to you again. It says to compensate descendants of enslaved Black people, okay? So that's Black people across the board, no matter where you're from, and people of African descent in the United States. Wait a minute. That's every Black person in the United States. That's people who are over here that are first, second, and third generation Caribbean African, which their parents was not a part of chattel slavery here in America. It's the way it reads, family. And listen, the people who are writing these legislations, who are writing these bills, they're some of the smartest people, I would like to believe, in America. Majority of politicians have passed the law, have passed the bar. They passed, they have their law degrees. They passed the I forgot the actual name of the bar, but they call it the bar, right? I forgot it's an abbreviation for something. But nonetheless, a lot of these people are lawyers and they're writing this trash. This is because they know that this will encompass other groups and other people. And we have to understand that all these organizations like the Congressional Black Cocksuckers, the Congressional Black Talkers, or the Congressional Black Congress or Caucus, that a vast majority of the people part of that organization are from other countries. So when I look at legislation like this, there are encompassing them as well. Keep Black people safe from or actively sanctioning white domestic terrorism and failing to prosecute it when it occurred. I applaud that. But what's the persecution? What is the end result? What is the end state? What will occur? Because we have all the statistics that tell people that Black people are the most harmed people in America. And when are we going to get rid of this whole term Black on Black crime? Really, people are still using this terminology. For what? For what? There was a shooting in Texas where 6 people dead, 3 people injured, and you already know who the culprit was. You already know what race it was. But my point being is this. They like to paint us in a particular light, but we have all the statistical data that they recorded. But they know people will not do the research. They know people will not go and look for themselves. They're just going to look at a short news clipping. They're going to watch their CNN. They're going to watch their MSNBC. And you're going to have Lester Holtz and some other people tell you how bad Black people are. Harms of racialized mass incarceration and family separation, oppressive and abusive criminalization, and the continued impact of embedded historical harms of the criminal legal systems of Black people and Black communities. That has teeth. Absolutely. The decimation of the Black community. See, it's things like this, family, that we have to dive truly into to understand the different dynamics, because, again, within this legislation, there's some teeth like this. So being a foundational Black American, you understand the history of this. A lot of people are still stuck on 1619. You see this? It says, whereas 1619, a year before the Mayflower arrived, on American shores marked the first year white Virginians purchased around 30 enslaved Angolians from Portuguese traders who were forcefully transported through the transatlantic slave trade. Thereafter launched a violent system of racial subjugation, exploitation, and genocide. But before that, listen, whereas Spanish colonizers brought enslaved Africans to modern-day Florida in 1565. So when Black Americans tell people who are from all these other countries, whether it be Europe, I've seen a lot of clips on YouTube of white people telling Black people to go back to their country. We like, what? Now, if they're from the Caribbean, from Haiti, they're from Africa, then we understand that. But what people don't understand is that Black people have been in this country prior to the so-called red Mongolian, Asian-looking type of Native Americans. See, there's facts, there's history, there's truth to those claims. I'm not making this up. But then we also have information here in federal legislation that tell people, wait a minute, there were Black people brought here prior to 1619? Yes. Over 100 enslaved Africans were brought here by Spanish conquistador colonizers to what we now know as Florida, between Florida, South Carolina, and some parts of Georgia. This is a lot of history that our people don't know. We're still stuck on 1619. Our history goes way back before that, okay? And again, the reason why I highlighted 1776, for those of you, the 4th of July, the so-called Independence Day, when we was freed from British rule, this is to let you know that foundational Black Americans, U.S. freedmen, African Americans that are descendants of enslaved Africans here in America, we are not immigrants. We're not immigrants. So when Joe Biden gets up on the pulpit and his teleprompter and all these things, this is a country of immigrants. No, it's not. It's not a country of immigrants, family. This is not a country of immigrants. And I tell people this all the time. Native Americans, the white pilgrims, settlers, colonizer, and enslavers, the indigenous Black folk that were here prior to them, as well as those who came over on boats and who was explorers themselves as well, who were here prior to 1776, the establishment of America. So when a white person or somebody of a lighter skin tone, or even somebody of the same skin tone, tell you that we're all immigrants, please teach them their history or teach them your history. Let's move on. Here's another piece of legislation that got passed. Now, when I look at all these legislations, family, what's the one thing that is consistent? See, legislation like this, right? Juneteenth National Independence Day Act. introduced, passed the Senate, passed the House to the president, and became law all in 1 year. See, it was introduced in February of 2021, and it was passed in June of 2021. But when I look at actual legislation like reparations, introduced. When I look at the George Floyd, it just passed the House, but it's nowhere near passing to the president and becoming law. We're still there, family. We're still at the beginning. So some things they can pass very, very quickly. You know why? Because Juneteenth was a holiday for everybody. See, you have Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Thanksgiving. You have all these holidays that everyone benefits from. Everybody is getting off that day. So this is not a day where they say, you know what, Juneteenth, National Independence Day, to celebrate and to recognize those enslaved Africans that were still enslaved in Texas. And so we're going to do, this is going to be a national holiday that all Black Americans can get off on. They'll never do that, right? No. But this is legislation for everybody. And guess what it is? This doesn't cost the country anything. This doesn't cost the country anything. This is free. Signing a piece of paper to let everybody in the country off. This is free. This does nothing. So what has Joe Biden done for Black America? Let me move on. Because there are some things that have been passed. What about this? Were you guys aware of this? Were you guys aware of this? United States Senate unanimously passes resolution honoring hip hop. I want to curse so bad. I'm trying to refrain from it. I know a lot of you don't like cursing. I'm trying to refrain from it. But it's pissing me off. We don't need a holiday to celebrate fucking hip hop. We don't need a holiday to celebrate hip hop because I asked the family again, what does this holiday do for Black folk? We have Black people on trial for freedom of speech. And I'm not putting on the cape for a Young Thug. I'm not putting on the cape for Young Thug, but he's going up for RICO charges about shit he said in a rap song. And let me just put this out there, family. Whether it be a country song, a rock song, a pop country song, or a pop song, hip hop, R&B, actors, actresses, creating movies, creating auditorial content, hip hop is an art form. It's a form of expression. It's not committing guilt of a crime. And here's the thing, some people are like, well, you know, he spoke very closely to some of the crimes that were occurring during the area. Yeah, hip hop artists does this all the time. And again, I don't know if he did it or not. But if you don't have actual evidence, how can you bring this to trial? That means that not only Black people are on trial, okay, that's a stretch, I know, but hip hop artists, Black people are on trial. Then freedom of speech of Black people are on trial again. Yeah, I can allude to all of that. I can bleed, I can mend, I can blend all of those in together because they passed a hip hop, honoring hip hop day, August of this year. It says Hip Hop Celebration Day, August 2023, Hip Hop Recognition Month, and November 2023 as Hip Hop History Month. What? So the United States Senate unanimously passes resolution honoring hip hop. So August is hip hop celebration. So I guess we're all going to be listening to the WAP song, right? We're all going to be listening to the WAP, drill rap, kill rap, gangster rap. We're going to be listening to that rap, celebrating hip hop. Then we're going to go in November and recognize the history of hip hop, which is much more positive, by the way. Yeah. This new rap, again, family, I grew up on hip hop. I love hip hop. But this new rap, and maybe I'm just getting old. Okay, maybe I'm just getting, it's very, very explicit. And you can't really listen to it while you have your kids in the car. And if you listen to the words, what are they actually promoting? But we're celebrating hip hop. We're celebrating hip hop. That is what the Democrats has done for Black people. We're celebrating hip hop. Let me see what they got down here. The United States Senate, okay, I already read that. It says that Schumer resolution designates August 11th It's Hip Hop Celebration Day to commemorate the day in 1973 when Clive DJ Kool Herc Campbell introduced his innovative musical style at a back-to-school party at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. In addition, it designates August 23 as Hip Hop Recognition Month, and blah blah blah. I'm not going to even dive into this, family, because again, this is the American government trying to deflect the conversation from actual tangibles from Black folk. See, we'll get all excited about this. Well, the Democrats, they passed a Hip Hop Celebration Day, and how does that help Black people? Well, they also in November they did a Hip Hop Recognition History Month. How does that help Black people? We have Black people who are suffering in these border towns because of illegal immigration soaking up the resources, as well as other sanctuary cities. We have a high rate of homelessness. We have real issues within these Black neighborhoods, and they're not being targeted by this administration. Damn, they're not even being targeted by the local administration. Well, fuck, they're not even being targeted by the state administration. But when it comes to millions and billions of dollars, we can send that over to Ukraine. We can send that over to Israel. Why did I point out the NARCs, the Do Nothing Organization 10-point plan? Why did I point this out? The first thing they're asking for is a goddamn apology. What are we doing? I'm asking you, family, what are we doing? We're asking for apologies. See, I think we need to start off by acknowledging the historic importance of civic engagement in voting. Now, even though we understand they keep trying to state that our voting rights because of voter ID is going to diminish the Black vote. Family, we have IDs. I went over that before. But I understand that voting is a fundamental right that everybody has. And to some extent, you should exercise it. Because I'll tell you really quickly, I'm not voting until reparations on the table. I'm not voting until a protected class status on the table for Black Americans. But I know some of you have businesses. I know some of you have special interests. By all means, knock yourself out. Because these Democrats and these Democratic-ran organizations like NARC, the National African American Reparations Commission, a lot of these organizations have long been viewed as an advocate for Black American communities, but they're more so for the minority American communities. And this perception plays a pivotal role, especially in the last election of 2020. Now, here's the question to a lot of you guys who are still on the fence. A lot of you guys are still, quote unquote, Democrats. My question is, whether the promises that were made, were they ever matched with tangible legislation? Because one key area of contention is criminal justice reform. Because the Democrats, Joe Biden and his cronies, made commitments to address systematic issues within criminal justice systems with the George Floyd bill, which has not been passed. But Juneteenth has. However, some argue that progressive have been slowed and meaningful changes yet to be seen. This question still has me somewhat, boggled at the mind. The promises that were made, are they a genuine commitment or just a ploy to secure votes? Can I ask that again? The promises that were made, are they a genuine commitment or is it a ploy to secure votes? So let's do a quick history lesson. Lyndon B. Johnson, Martin Luther King sat down. Lyndon B. Johnson came out the meeting, got the Black vote 80, 90%. Ever since then, majority of Black folk have been voting Democrat. Ever since then, the Democrats have been securing the vote. Ever since then, Black folk has been in a worse position than we were prior to that. Because let me tell you something about the real role of identity politics. Because identity politics also plays a significant role in the Democratic strategy by highlighting racial disparities, as they do all the damn time, Don't they? They do it all the time. They do it all the time, family. They highlight racial disparities and they emphasize the need for being inclusive. They sought to create a strong emotional connection with Black voters all the time. They come out, they pat you on the back, they give you a ride and they kick your ass out when it's time to vote. And here's what they understand. They understand that representation matters. But here's my concern. Whether it translates into substantive policy and policy changes that directly benefit Black neighborhoods. Because another argument revolves around the selective memory of the Democratic policies. Critics point out that some of the challenges faced by Black communities today have roots in policies implemented by previous Democratic administrations. I want you to think back, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, just those two, of the so-called Democratic policies that were promised to Black folk and we never received. Or did they ever promise us anything in the first place, or at least publicly? Because here's the thing, you're gonna go to church, and as you get closer to voting day, the Democrats will come into those towns and cities where the vote is kind of weak for Black folk, and they're gonna fatten your pastors, your reverends, your bishops' pockets with a couple of $1,000s, and they're gonna allow them to speak at the church. Or the church administration are going to be promoting you being Democrat and getting out and voting Joe Biden, voting Kamala Harris. You know I'm right, family. You know I'm right. Let's talk about fear mongering, because that has been one of the biggest tactics that Democrats have used to get the Black vote. Because some of you, again, may argue that Democrats leverage the fear of a supposed existential threat, Donald Trump, emphasizing the urgency to vote against a common enemy while rallying against injustice is essential. Here's my concern, that this is a fear-based approach that might overshadow the need for a comprehensive legislative agenda. See, when they do these kind of smear commercials and they kind of point out some things that may seem detrimental to Black folk, we automatically get fearful that the commander in chief is going to be back here, AKA the Orange Man, AKA Donald Trump, is going to get back into office and all of a sudden create legislation to kill all Black people, which is untrue. I'm not telling you go in side with Donald Trump. I'm not telling you go inside with Joe Biden. I'm telling you to look at the policies. Look at the policies, not the commercials. The commercials are built with rhetoric, conjecture, bias, prejudice. All of those things are in those commercials. And I approve this message. All those ones, they end with that bullshit. But that's what's going on. That is what's going on, family. And we must understand the political atmosphere that we are currently in. Because you have these 10-point plans by NARC that does nothing. I went through this. I won't go over again. I'm moving on. NCOBRA. Okay, NCOBRA. Are you guys familiar with NCOBRA? The National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Let me get down to the nitty-gritty of things. Let me show you how they fool Black Americans all the time. What is reparations? They kind of give you this whole definition of what reparations is. That's good. That's good. That's good. Because they do have cash payments on here. That's good. Then they give you examples of groups who have received reparations. Jewish victims of the Nazi Holocaust and their descendants. Japanese Americans interned in concentration camps in the United States during World War II. Alaska Natives for land, labor, and resource taken. Victims of the massacre in Rosewood, we will have to ask them. Florida and their descendants. Native Americans as a remedy for violations of treaty rights, and political dissenters in Argentina and their descendants. So all these groups who have been wronged by America has got their reparations, except with the exception of the Jewish survivors who came over here, that Obama and Biden are giving them reparations, okay, for their dignity and support, okay? And what people don't understand is you have a large group of Jewish people who are the survivors of the Holocaust and their descendants. And guess what, family? We still have probably less than 100 people who were children of enslaved Africans still alive today, like 105. They're quite old. But nonetheless, we are survivors of our ancestors that were enslaved Africans. Just to point out a kind of a contrast there. It states here, what forms should reparations take? And again, just like I showed you with the other organization, here's the trick language. Who are descendants of enslaved Africans? I don't know why they keep saying that. Well, I do know why. Who should receive reparations? Black people. Can I move this over? Let me decrease this a little bit here. Can you guys see that? Black people of African descent in the United States. Black people of African descent in the United States. Don't some of you guys have Nigerian friends? Right. Don't some of you guys have Ghanaian friends, Kenyan friends, South African friends, Nambian, Gambian, Madagascar, Mauritius, Algeria, Libya? All these countries are in Africa. So it says people of African descent. People of African descent. Is African a people or is Africa a place? You see what I'm getting at? That means, again, I like to use these two because, again, they're white. Charlize Theron and Elon Musk are white Africans. So African is simply been from the African continent of African descent, meaning that your people are from Africa. But it doesn't delineate, it doesn't separate foundational Black Americans or enslaved Black Americans of chattel slavery in America. It doesn't say none of that. Descendants, Black descendants of American slavery. It says none of that, family. It says Black people of African descent in the United States. Yeah, man, we just came over here from Uganda. I'm glad we came over here on why we did, because we're gonna get some of these reparations. And don't get me wrong, they have some of the verbiage here. But what I'm stating is it needs to be consistent. Black people of African descent and supporting processes, okay, of self-determination will not only benefit descendants of enslaved Africans, but all African descent people in the United States who, because of their color, are victims. And again, this is in Cobra. These do nothing tether organizations, NARC, Cobra, NAACP, Urban League, you name it. You name it. Let me move on. But you see how they had that? It says but, and everybody knows once you say but, you negate everything before that. All African descended people in the United States. Just wanted to point that out to you, family. ADOS. I haven't really like socially accepted this terminology for one thing. It says American descendants of slavery. As I told you, many groups will try to say they were slaves in America, and the one designation, it doesn't have Black. It don't even have, it don't even have African. It is American descendants of slavery. So right there, but it does have a dollar amount. They are talking about cash payments, so that's notable to the least. And good old AACP. Reparations for descendants of enslaved persons of African descent. What does it sound like? Doesn't it sound like Cobra? See, what they do, family, they get these organizations in the Black community and they have them to go out in drove and they pass out lollipops and fish sandwiches and tell them you need to go out and vote. And they give you a little voter button. You feel like you've been committed and you feel like you're part of a team. Then after you vote and after they swear in the president, do you hear from them again? Do they come to your neighborhood and collect the drug addicts and put them in rehab? Do they fix up the infrastructure? Do they decontaminate your contaminated water? Are they fixing your sidewalks and your roads, your electricity? Are they helping the Black neighborhoods that need the support of this political party that we've been voting for ever since the 60s? No, they do not. Now, when it comes to a local and a state level, that's where our power really resides. Even with reparations, you will see there's a lot of organizations out there, especially on a local level. Okay. I think I had some written down when I was doing my research, family. You have organizations like the Chicago Reparations Commission, the California Reparations Task Force. But again, there's a lot of these commissions and task forces that are local that has more teeth than any federal legislation, but it needs to start somewhere. That is the important part. And listen to this. So they got, in all these years, the association reaffirmed and continues to stand in favor of financial reparations for African Americans and those of African descent in the United States that are descendants of the slavery and the Jim Crow era. I'm just NAACP, another do nothing organization. At the top of it all off, we got the good old Urban League. The Urban League, I've been all over their site. I haven't found reparations. Correct me if I'm wrong, family. Let me know. And look, news release. They got the NAACP right here. So I went, what do we do? So I came over here, I looked, I said diversity, equity, and inclusion, blah, blah, blah. Equitable, just, and strategic initiatives. Okay. State of Black America. Let's look at State of Black America. Let's blow this up for you guys. State of Black America. It says State of Black America is a signature annual report of the National Urban League since its first appearance, 1976. I'm going to fast forward here, family. Each edition contains penetrating commentary and insightful analysis from recognizing authorities and leading figures in politics. That's all I got. Again, another organizations are going to map out, they're going to list, they're going to mention all the things that happened to our forefathers, ancestors, and even to us in the streets today. After dismantling of Jim Crow and the freedoms won during the Civil Rights Movement, some of the most violent forms of white supremacy began to undergo throughout America. But in recent years, dangerous rhetoric that emboldens the racist and incites violence has moved from the dark web into mainstream politics. Okay, well, that's, yeah, you're pointing those things out. Now what? Far-right extremists advocating for the erasure of our civil liberties are infiltrating our military ranks, law enforcement, political system, and classrooms under the guise of parents' rights. The racist ideology supporting the movement can also be tied to the increase in hate crimes, mass shootings, and police brutality, claiming the lives of communities of color every day. Claiming the lives of communities of color every day. So again, a lot of these organizations, family, title and position themselves as organizations that are in support of Black Americans. But anytime you go to their website or read any proposed legislation that they have promoted, that they may have even introduced to Congress, you know what you get? Communities of color. Communities of color. If I go to the Congressional Black Caucus website right now, bear with me, family, bear with me. Congressional Black Caucus website here. Let me see. Here we go. I'm going to show you how these do-nothing organizations, even the Congressional Black Caucus, who are supposedly there speaking up for the rights and the benefits of Black folk, I'm going to show you how they totally don't do that at all. Let me show you some key words here. Let's stay here. 1971, the Congressional Black Caucus had been committed to using the full constitutional power, statutory authority, and financial resources of the federal government to ensure that African Americans and, can I point that out? other marginalized communities in the United States that had the opportunity to achieve the American dream, skipping down here, and then it says here. Let me find it. Give me 1 second. Expanding access to capital contracts and counseling for who? Minority-owned businesses. Minority-owned businesses. So already trick language in this. And to give you guys a comparison here, because I just don't want to point out the Congressional Black Caucus. Can we go to the Hispanic Congressional Caucus? Can we go to the Hispanic Congressional Caucus? Kind of hard, family. I'm going to the Hispanic Congressional Caucus. That's where I'm going. Look at Fat Joe, still pushing that narrative that Latinos and Black people started hip hop. Stop the cap, Fat Joe. Let's go to about. What the Congressional Hispanic Caucus is about, okay? I see one dark melanated brother up here. Okay, cool. Let's see what the Congressional Caucus is about. It states here the Congressional Hispanic Caucus was founded in 1976. Let me move down. The CHC addresses national and international issues and craft policies that impact who? The Hispanic community. The Hispanic community. Whatever happened to Black and Brown? What happened to Black and Brown? Because when I go over here to the to the Congressional Black Caucus, it says African Americans and other marginalized communities and minority-owned businesses. When I go to the Hispanic Congressional Caucus, I get the Hispanic community. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus is standing up for the Hispanic community. And guess what? I applaud Hispanics standing up for Hispanics. I really do. That's what they should do. Why are we grouping in other groups in our slight and fight for power and support from the federal government? It says the function of the caucus to serve as a forum for who? The Hispanic members of Congress. It says the caucus is to dedicate to voicing and advancing through legislative process issues, affecting Hispanics in the United States, Puerto Rico, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. So when I look at this, family, who are they advocating for? Oh, Hispanics. Not Black and Brown, but when it comes to the Congressional Black Caucus, other marginalized communities and minority-owned businesses. You guys really need to look at this. And a family, bear with me one more time. I'm going to look up the Asian Congressional Caucus, okay? Because maybe the Asians grouped in Black folk or maybe Hispanic folk, because maybe it's just not for Asians. Even though the Hispanic folk, they're looking out for their own special interests, which I applaud because it's the Hispanic Congressional Caucus and not the Congressional Black Caucus, okay? So let's go over here for the Asian Pacific American Caucus. Here it is. I found it. Okay, we have some Asians on the front page here. Let's go to what they are about us. Let's see what they're about. Let's see if we can see what they got over here. They got a bunch of tweets. Let me try to find this very quickly, family. Let me try to find this for you guys. There's a lot of tweets on this page. I'm trying to get down to the nitty gritty of this. Okay, give me 1 second. Maybe they changed their website about the chairwoman. Let me see. Here we go. Purpose, missions, and goals. Let's see if it's in there. Here we go. Here is the purpose, missions, and goals of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. Okay. It says compromise of members of Congress of Asian and Pacific Islander descent and members who have a strong dedication to promoting the well-being of the Asian American and Pacific Islander community and other marginalized communities or minority-owned businesses. Do any of us see that wordage in here? Hold on, I don't have my glasses. Let me put on my glasses, family. Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see I don't see marginalized communities, and I don't see minority-owned business, which that encompasses everybody. That's why I keep saying marginalized, because everybody's marginalized except for white people, right? And some people argue except for, white women as well. But anyway, I digress. Currently chaired by the Congresswoman Judy Chu, has been addressing the needs of the AAPI community in all areas of life. Okay, let's see if it's the purpose. Let's see if this, Congress, Asian American, Asian American, to educate other members of Congress about the history, contribution, concerns of Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, Asian Americans, I got it. To work with other members in caucus to protect and advance the civil and constitutional rights of all Americans. Okay, that's a good one. That encompasses everybody. To establish policy and legislation and issue relating to persons of Asian and Pacific Island industry. Okay. To provide a structure to coordinate the efforts and enhance the ability of the Asian American Pacific Islander members of Congress. Jermaine Anderson, thank you for moderating, sir. I do appreciate it. Family, if you like this video, please give us a thumb up and also share this on your social media. So when people ask you, what have Democrats, what have Joe Biden done for America? As I told you before, he's okay with black people at the table during voting time. Oh yeah, he's okay with it. Where is it at? He's okay with it. He's okay with you guys at the table. He's okay with black people at the table. He's okay with holding hands on Edda's Pettit Bridge to get votes. They all are okay with the symbolism of showing black people we are in utter support of your movement. We're in utter support of the atrocities that you guys endured. But we're not giving you guys reparations. We may never pass the George Floyd bill. We'd be damned if we wipe away qualified immunity so black folk can start suing police officers. We won't do that because we know that police officer, out of all the groups in America, they brutalize black people the most. So there'd be a lot of court cases. So we won't do that. But we're going to have a dinner at the White House, and we're going to invite all the black political pundits and ass kissers and coons and bootlicks. And we're going to get all you guys together in one room. We're going to talk about a bunch of nothing. And we're going to show black people, we're going to get on the Edmonds Pettis Bridge. We're going to hold hands and we're going to walk across it. That's what's going to happen. And we're going to have your sister girl, Kamala Mammy Harris, out there to show that us Democrats, we love us some black people during voting time. Family, they have done nothing for the black Americans in this country. We have to stop falling for the trick bag every 2 and 4 years, voting these do-nothing politicians into office. I know this is geared mainly towards the Democrats, and the reason for that is because we have consistently given our vote to the Democrats. We have consistently given our vote to the Democrats, and we never give them our terms of demands. We never give them our demands. So either they make empty promises or they make no promises at all. Some of us are so indoctrinated and brainwashed that we can't fathom sitting it out. Voting for the lesser of two evil, family, is not a strategy that wins. It's not a strategy that has worked. We have to start putting our money where our mouth is. And that means that if nothing's on the table for black people, then I don't think we should vote at all. You guys have a great, wonderful evening.